Evening and welcome. The February 22nd City of Cuyahoga Falls Council meeting is now called to order. Ms. Capriello, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Balthus?
Here.
Mr. Brohart?
Here.
Mr. Gorbach?
Here.
Mr. Ayula?
Here.
Mr. James?
Here.
Ms. Loza?
Here.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Ms. Nichols Rhodes?
Here.
Mrs. Penta?
Here.
Mrs. Spinner? Here. Mr. Stams?
Here.
Thank you. Let the record show that everyone is in attendance. We'll have the invocation by Mrs. Spinner.
Thank you. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity to engage in meaningful discussion, and we ask for guidance and support as we begin this meeting. Fill us with grace and wisdom as we make decisions that will affect our city and our neighbors. For all this we pray. Amen.
Thank you. And now we will have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We had the minutes sent out from the February 8th meeting. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, they'll stand as written. Ms. Capriello, do we have any readings or petitions, communications?
Yes, Mr. President. We have a notice from the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding new permit number 6511951 to Owen Real Estate Services doing business as Not Napa Wine, 1884-86 Front Street, Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio, 44221.
Thank you. And we have the introduction of new ordinances and resolutions. Ms. Capriello.
Temporary ordinance E9, presented by the administration, an ordinance appropriating $1,309,632 of community development block grant carryover funds for calendar year 2021 and declaring an emergency.
Finance and Appropriations, Mr. Gorbach.
Temporary ordinance, I'm sorry, these are out of order. B8, presented by the administration, an ordinance amending and or supplementing Title VII Taxation, Chapter 164, Municipal Income Tax to comply with state law mandates and declaring an emergency.
Finance and Appropriations, Mr. Gorbach.
Temporary ordinance B10, presented by the administration upon recommendation of the Traffic Committee. An ordinance amending the traffic control file by providing for installation of various traffic control devices and declaring an emergency.
Public Affairs, Mr. Balthus. Okay, thank you. And we have no public hearings tonight. And we have no reports for any special committees or any reports of any standing committees. So we'll go right down to the announcement of the schedule of future council meetings, which would be March the 1st. Planning and Zoning, Mrs. Spinner.
Subject to call.
Finance and Appropriations, Mr. Gorbach.
Yes, thank you. We'll meet March 1st at 6:30.
Public and Industrial Improvements, Ms. Nichols Rhodes.
Subject to call, Mr. President.
Public Affairs, Mr. Balthus.
Thank you, Mr. President. We will meet Monday, March 1st at 6:35.
And Community Development, Mrs. Penta.
Subject to call, Mr. President.
Okay, thank you. All righty. Do we have any miscellaneous business to come before council? Mrs. Calavecchio.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to talk for just a moment about 3 items in our department. A while back, I had distributed via email to all of council the 2020 annual economic development spreadsheet report. And I hadn't made any comments about that. I didn't want to interrupt what was going on with the Park and Rec presentation the last time, and then we hadn't met. So tonight, what I'd like to say is this. As far as total economic development in our city, with respect to just the downtown area, last year we completed 76 new jobs, and we completed an increase in economic project value of $3,145,000. Elsewhere in the city, we completed 154 jobs and improved our economic base by $48,295,000. And that compared to the prior year-to-date comparisons, by being an increase of 4 jobs over 2019 and an increase in economic development to the tune of $44,548,500. A large part of that was as a result of French Mill building phase 2 and the Woodlands building out, which is pretty much completely built out at this point. So I wanted to make mention of that. And also, just a side note, the improvements to the parking lot for Summit DD are underway. The bidding is going out, and we expect that the parking lot over there for Summit DD folks will start this spring. The buildings have been demoed. If you've been by there, you probably have noticed that. The second thing I wanted to mention was that we spoke a little bit about this at budget, was that we were allocating some funds toward a new endeavor called the facade program at South State. And if you've been on Facebook lately, you'll know that the meetings that we've had with our business owners over there have culminated in them putting together a social media presence. And they have their own Facebook page now called Cuyahoga Falls Southside District. And they have about 200 members so far. As a result, in allocating those funds for our budget, we had been telling them that we're now ready, January 1st, we were ready to accept applications for both facade and sign grants. We have received 17 applications for those facade grants, and we will be accepting them. No one has completed them yet. We will be reviewing those and bringing those down for approval before the loaning committee. We were extremely thrilled that many building owners and businesses on South State were listening and willing to participate. Remember, these are matching grant dollars. So whatever design they put together, we're only giving them half of their requested amount, and they have to come up with the other half. So stay tuned for that and look forward. We look really very forward to this year, seeing the improvement and the revitalization and beautification efforts along that corridor of our city. And the third and final thing I wanted to make mention of is that we have a personnel issue to let council know about, and that is our dear Fred Guerra is going to be retiring effective March 31st. So I know all of you will want to reach out to him and congratulate him. I'm extremely jealous of him, but it is not my turn, it's his. And he is going to be here before council at least one other time. I know we'll have some legislation down here, so you will get to see him on council floor at least one more time before he leaves. But having said that, we're extremely pleased that he agreed to give us such a good notice, because he's going to be a tough guy to replace. As you know, he's been a valuable resource and has an unbelievable amount of institutional knowledge. He knows where everything is, every land use plan that the city's ever done. He just could put his hand on it in a heartbeat in a second. So we'll really miss him. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's absolute fabulous numbers with the growth in new jobs and business development for 2020. I think that is absolutely outstanding. And I am really tickled about the 17 potential applications for South State Road. It's just a wonderful job you've done there. Very much appreciated. Do we have any questions for Ms. Calavecchio? Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hoffman, do you have any report for us?
Thank you, Mr. President. I did send out report 21 electronically last Tuesday. That was as of the end of January numbers. I'll briefly touch on the end of the year, and then I'll just talk a little bit about where I see us going in 21. We've had some more information this beginning of year than we had at budget time when we spent a lot of time talking about city finances. At the end of the year, our general fund balance was $13,874,307. That was a pretty large jump from 2020, and there were three main sources of one-time revenues that we saw in 2020 that allowed us to get to that number. Those three sources are the CARES Act. That's the largest of them. That accounted for about $5.5 million in one-time money. We also gave, as the city that had done fairly well with the self-insurance fund with medical expenses in 2020. That was primarily because of elective surgeries and COVID-related issues that we gave two premium holidays in December. That obviously impacts the employees. It also impacts the city finances to a greater degree. And then the third piece of that was the Ohio Bureau of Workers' Comp. They gave back quite a bit of money in 2020. They did 3 distributions in 2020. All told, it was a little over $2 million for the city. We had to pay that back to the Bureau of Workers' Compensation Fund, but we also were able to transfer a good portion of that back to the general fund. With those sources, we were able to grow our cash balance in 2020. 2021, since we've done budget and just a little bit of highlights there, in the month of February, we did receive a adjusted property tax number. It did go up about 14% from what we saw the last 3 years. Every 3 years, this county does a triennium reappraisal. They do let me start with every 6 years they do a full reappraisal. Every 3 years they do a desk review, and they do an adjustment. So our property tax numbers were based on the same number the last 3 years. They did a reappraisal, and that was approved in December at the state. We did get back those numbers, and like I said, it was about a 14% increase. In the local government funds, we did get some new numbers from the state of Ohio and projections. We do anticipate those numbers coming in very similarly to 2020, which we had budgeted for a slight decrease. And so there's a little bit more revenue we do anticipate. And the other areas are pretty much to budget. One area we'll talk about is income tax. We have been tracking that very closely. We've run estimates at the end of the year. We run estimates beginning of this year, what we've seen. We do anticipate income taxes coming in a little bit above what we had anticipated income taxes in 2020. One big reason is we did get a very large net income deposit into the city of about $700,000 for one of our businesses. That is kind of a one-time shot in the arm. We'll see that in the 2021 numbers. Other than that, income tax, we still anticipate being fairly flat throughout 2021. On the street construction repair and maintenance fund, gasoline tax, we do anticipate being slightly down from budget, very slightly, but those numbers are coming in real close. We just don't know how that's going to go through the summer. Hopefully people will drive, buy gasoline, and then those numbers will rebound. The one area is that we don't have great numbers on yet, of course, is hotel motel and our fees, license, and permits. There's some timing issues within the report. One item, it's kind of interesting, our state of Ohio, the Mudbrook Mill Pond Tax Incremental Equivalent Fund that we've budgeted a couple of years and we've received no income. I do check in on them time to time at the state. That application has been pending for about 2 years now. I did get an email this month that said that they should approve it by the end of the month. So that's interesting. So hope to see some revenue in there and this month and this year. So hopefully that'll get approved and it'll go through the process. In our enterprise funds, not much to talk about there from budget. We have not seen a huge increase in delinquencies from past years, and so those have been on track. I know that federal dollars and some of the relief bills that have come out of the federal government have focused on rental payments, and we've been working with the county on providing some of those numbers. Another round of rental assistance should be opening up here in early March from indications of the county. So that should be coming through from the last stimulus bill that came through. But in the enterprise funds, we haven't seen too much going on there. In the leisure time fund, that we are looking at those numbers very carefully. We obviously have a huge asset in the natatorium. I have, every time I leave the city building, seems like the natatorium parking lot is pretty full compared to last year, which I think is a good thing. We have seen daily numbers tick up a bit this winter, but we have not seen an increase or even flat. We've seen a little bit of a decrease in yearly memberships. And so that's going to be a challenge, I think, as the natatorium goes through 2021. And then we'll see how the other facilities do as we get into summer months. I don't anticipate being much variance to budget at this point in time, but obviously those departments are very weather dependent. We do try as best we can. We have been trying to match and control budgets on the expense side. Obviously, we're doing what we can there, but we do need minimum staffing to operate those facilities. As I mentioned on the self-insurance fund, we have not seen a tick up in those numbers, hospitalization numbers yet this year. Obviously, COVID has been a big issue through December and January and here into February. Luckily, we started to see those numbers come down. But the elective surgeries have been on hold for the most part still, and we've seen self-insurance numbers flat to even a little bit less than last year. But obviously in January and February of last year, COVID wasn't a thing. So we'll see how those numbers shake out as we get through 2021. With that, that would be report 21 in a nutshell for this month. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions y'all may have.
Any questions for Mr. Hoffman? Ms. Nichols-Rhodes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm sorry, Mr. Hoffman, that I didn't think to ask you this before. So if you don't have the answer at this minute, that is totally understandable. But would you have an idea of how much money the city has not received in revenue from rental of like Lions Park and the different rental facilities in Park and Rec?
You're right. I don't have that number. We can take a stab at that and get an estimate for you, and I'd be happy to send that out to all of council.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hoffman. Thank you, Mr. President.
Any other questions for Mr. Hoffman? I would just like to make a comment, Mr. Hoffman. I think you've done an absolutely outstanding job with the city's funds. And I do have a question regarding, you've done also very outstanding with the bonds and refinancing them as the rates have dropped. I think rates are kind of at the bottom. Do you see rates dropping, and are there any more of our bonds that you feel we could refinance?
One, I don't know if rates are going to be dropping any more than they have. And in fact, I think we've seen some upticks in some of our yields, well, the market yields out there. And no, well, I shouldn't say no. We've refinanced almost everything last fall. We did do an analysis on refinancing the bonds that are outstanding on the Portage Crossing development. Those are a taxable issue, where the others that we refinanced in the fall were non-tax. Those are not considered callable for another, I think, 2 or 3 years. And so we would have to do sort of a an advance refinancing on that. We did do an analysis on was it a good time to advance refund those, and we looked at rates and what we would save if we waited to refinance those, and where that break-even point would be. And we decided at that time not to refinance those. I think we'll save quite a bit of money if we wait to refinance those. Even if the market goes, the yields start to go up another 1% or 2%, we'd still save money on refinancing those. So we decided to wait. Other than that, we are still in some notes on some of the tax incremental financings that we have pegged with the TIF money coming in. The Historic Trail development we are in notes on. My plan was to keep them in notes, as I feel like we may be able to pay those off sooner than bonding them out for 10 years. I think that would be advantageous to the city. And so I wanted to keep that flexibility for the city. And so we decided to do it that. But other than that, everything is bonded out at a very, very low rate, and have been really happy with where we are from a debt service perspective.
Thank you. I always like to note how well that you do in analyzing all of our funds. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else to come before council?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion to adjourn and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying yes. Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, say no. We are officially adjourned. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Good night.
Congratulations.
Have a good one, everybody, and congrats